I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Next up is the approval of open session minutes, November 15th and January 17th.
So move.
Motion to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Okay, next up is policies for second review.
Yes, good morning. The first policy that we have for second review is policy 1-14, the adoption of policies policy. And this was reviewed in January by this committee and by the board in February. There's been no stakeholder input since that time, and staff would ask that this go for approval at the March board meeting.
Okay,
Motion to recommend approval by the full board.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the next one is depositories policy 2-9, and that was reviewed in January by this committee and by the board in February. There's been no stakeholder input since that time, and the staff would ask that this go for approval at the March meeting as well.
Recommend approval by the full board.
Second.
All in favor? Aye,
Aye.
Aye.
thank you. 4-0, next.
Okay, the next one is policy 2-14 payroll deductions, and this is in the same circumstances. This committee in January, board in February, and there's been no stakeholder input. Staff would ask that this go to the March meeting for approval.
Recommend approval by the full board.
Second.
All in favor? Aye,
Aye.
thank you. 4-0,
And then one more for second review, policy 5-14, extracurricular activities and interscholastic athletics. And this is the same circumstances. It came to this committee in January and the board in February. There's been no stakeholder input since that time, and staff would ask that this go to the board for approval in March.
Recommend full approval. Recommend approval by the full board.
Second.
all in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you. So those 4 policies will go to the full board on March 7th, I think, right? Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yep. So next up is policies for first review.
The first one is policy 2-19, contracts with the board. The revisions in this policy have been recommended by the finance department and I think the facilities department as well. Ms. McLam and Mr. Moore have worked with their staff on these. It came before the board a couple years ago. So this is the recommendation, and I apologize, there's some highlighted portions on this, and that was just because the version that Ms. McLam was using didn't have that language in there, and I wanted her to notice that that had already been approved. As you remember, the red is what's being deleted, the green is what's being added. And so staff would ask that this go for review at the March meeting.
We're good with this?
The change in the amount to go to $10,000 is consistent with, I think, the state recommendations from what my understanding is from Ms. McLam.
So this is for principals and department heads.
And just for clarification, there's deletion of the or change orders. And that's because there is another policy which addresses the change order piece.
Recommend sending it to the full board for first review.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
4-0, thank you. Next up is policy 3-2C.
The revisions from this policy are proposed by the School Boards Association due to some policy and legislative changes. And staff would ask that this go to the board at the March meeting for first review. The only change in this is how you can use evaluation data, and it allows you to use it for more than just professional development, et cetera. It does allow you to use it for other pieces.
Motion
This be
to send it to the
beneficial?
full board for first review.
Second.
All in favor?
Yeah, I had a
Aye.
question.
Jimmy, you have a question?
Will this be beneficial, Michelle?
Yeah, I think it will be, absolutely. It allows us to address performance issues that are developed as part of evaluation data.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I have a motion and a second. No, second.
Second,
Yes, Reverend Kirkpatrick.
All in
seconded.
favor? Aye.
aye,
Aye, 4-0, thank you. Next up is 3-5, drug-free workplace.
Yes, these changes were proposed by the School Boards Association due to some changes for districts under federal regulation. It's been reviewed by our folks in transportation, in facilities, by our risk manager, and all are in support of these changes and can implement them. So the request is that this go for review at the March meeting as well.
Any comments?
Motion to recommend to the full board for the first reading.
second,
All in favor?
Aye.
4-0, thank you. Next up is a proposed new policy.
Yes, the next two are proposed new policies. And as we go through policies, sometimes we realize there's pieces that are missing in the policies that the board currently has. And as you know, we reviewed just a few seconds ago, the evaluation of licensed employees. Well, we didn't have anything that addressed the evaluation of non-licensed employees in policy. So obviously it's important for that group of employees to understand what the expectations are, how they're evaluated. And so the recommendation is to use this policy to fill that gap that we had.
So the policy says evaluation of classified employees. Is it supposed to be non-licensed? I know-
That's the same. No,
I know it's the same, but which is?
Yeah. I think classified people understand that better.
Okay, so. Okay.
should there be maybe a parentheses with non-licensed or something?
We can add that, certainly.
This policy doesn't set a specific time frame for the evaluations. In other words, annually. It's just the process.
Yeah, we have an internal process that all employees are evaluated annually. I can add language in there that would clarify, absolutely.
Uh,
I could, in that first paragraph, the last sentence, I can put annual evaluations of non-licensed employees' performance must conform to the following.
There you go.
I will do that right now.
Recommend the amended version to the full board for first reading.
Second,
All in favor?
aye,
Aye.
4-0, thank you. Next.
This is also a proposed new policy, children of military families. There were some changes in state law adopted last year, and this would help address those. There was a military compact that's in place. And we had pieces of this in other policies, but this puts it all together in one place. And so we would recommend that this go for review at the March meeting.
so did we extrapolate it from all the other places to create this document, this policy? Or it'll still be referenced in other policies, but this would just be sort of like home base?
That's correct. The second, that it's still in the other policies and this is home base.
Thank you.
Any other comments? No?
Recommend we send a full board for first reading.
Second,
All in favor?
aye,
Aye. 4-0, thank you. Next up for discussion is policy 5-1.
Yeah, as Ms. Heintel mentioned, there's some proposed legislation that's going to impact the changes potentially that we were making this policy. So it seemed to make sense to see where the General Assembly goes. So we're not doing a back and forth potentially, or changing one thing and then having to change it again. And the bill seemed to be getting some traction. So we just, in talking to Ms. Heintel and with cabinet staff, it seemed to make sense to kind of do a little bit of a pause to make sure that we capture everything, or we don't do something that is contrary to what the General Assembly is dealing with.
I would expect, I believe it's passed, isn't it past the state house, state senate
Let me see. what the
or
current
committee?
That's-
It's moving pretty fast.
There's two of them.
One version has passed the state senate, I believe, but I expect whichever version comes out will be.
I think the House had changes to it, but I could be wrong.
Okay. All right. So there'll be a reconciliation process, it sounds like. Then I expect it to be vetoed. So we'll have to see if the veto could be overridden. And if I remember correctly, it only deals with material through the 4th grade, inappropriate or sexual content material through 4th grade. And our proposed policy didn't have a grade limitation. So well, I agree. We'll have to see what eventually comes out, if anything.
Yeah, the last action I have on it is that it completed the Senate, went to the rules, calendar, and operations of the House on the 7th of February.
Okay. All right. So I guess we'll wait and see.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. So we know what the actions are taken to the full board, the policies for second review and the policies for first review. And our next meeting is March 21 at 8 a.m. via Zoom. Need a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
There you go.
Have a good day.